The truth about being quiet in a loud world. Imagine this. You're at a networking event in downtown Chicago, standing near the coffee table while everyone around you seems to effortlessly work the room. They're laughing loudly, interrupting each other, and somehow managing to talk about 3 different topics at once. Meanwhile, you're observing, listening, maybe having one meaningful conversation with the person next to you about something that actually matters. But as you watch this social circus, you can't shake that familiar feeling that something's wrong with you for not being the loudest person in the room. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. In fact, you're part of a quiet revolution that's been happening for over 2,000 years, and you probably don't even know it yet. I used to think there was something fundamentally broken about my personality. While my coworkers in Manhattan would gather around the water cooler every morning, competing to see who could tell the most dramatic story about their commute, I'd slip quietly to my desk with my coffee, preferring to start my day in peaceful reflection. I wasn't antisocial or unfriendly. I just found more value in listening than in adding to the noise. But society kept sending me the message that I needed to speak up, be more visible, and somehow transform myself into someone I wasn't. That's when I discovered something remarkable. The greatest minds in history, the philosophers who literally shaped how we think about wisdom, courage, and inner strength, were describing a way of life that felt incredibly familiar to my introvert soul. These ancient Stoics weren't telling people to become social butterflies or to dominate every conversation. Instead, they were teaching something revolutionary. That true power comes from within, that wisdom often wears the mask of silence, and that the ability to be comfortable in your own company isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in human history, spent his evenings writing private thoughts to himself. Epictetus taught that we should speak only when necessary and choose our words carefully. Seneca found his greatest insights not in the Roman Forum's debates, but in quiet contemplation. These weren't socially awkward outcasts. These were leaders who understood that in a world full of noise, the person who has mastered inner peace holds the real advantage. What I'm about to share with you isn't just philosophy. It's a practical guide for thriving as an introvert in an extroverted world. You're going to discover why your natural tendencies aren't character flaws to overcome, but strengths to develop. You'll learn how ancient wisdom can help you navigate modern social pressures without losing yourself in the process. And most importantly, you'll understand why the world needs your quiet strength now more than ever. The Stoics knew something that our loud, always-on culture has forgotten. That the most profound transformations happen not in the spotlight, but in the quiet moments when we're brave enough to look within. Your introversion isn't a bug in your personality programming. It's a feature that gives you access to wisdom that others miss while they're busy making noise. 1. Why the world misunderstands quiet people and why that's their loss. Here's what happened to Sarah, a software developer in Seattle. During her performance review, her manager told her she needed to speak up more in meetings and show more leadership presence. Never mind that Sarah had quietly solved 3 major system bugs that month, mentored 2 junior developers, and consistently delivered her projects ahead of schedule. Because she didn't dominate the conference room with her voice, somehow her contributions were invisible. Sound familiar? This is the daily reality for millions of introverts who live in a world that has confused volume with value, noise with intelligence, and constant talking with actual leadership. We've created a society that celebrates the squeaky wheel while ignoring the steady engine that actually keeps everything running. The truth is, the world has gotten introversion completely backwards. We're not failed extroverts who need to be fixed. We're not shy people who lack confidence. We're not antisocial hermits who avoid human connection. These are lazy stereotypes that miss the point entirely. What we actually are is something far more valuable. We're the observers in a world of performers, the listeners in a room full of talkers, and the thinkers in an age of instant reactions. But here's where it gets interesting. This misunderstanding isn't new. Over 2,000 years ago, the ancient Stoics were dealing with the exact same social pressures in ancient Rome, a civilization that was just as loud, just as focused on public displays of power, and just as quick to judge people who preferred depth over drama. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire at its peak, wrote in his private journal, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." He wasn't talking about military strategy here. He was talking about the social pressure to conform to everyone else's idea of how a leader should behave. Here was the most powerful man in the world, and he was essentially saying, I don't need to be loud to be strong. Think about what Rome was like in those days. The forum was filled with politicians shouting over each other, trying to outperform their rivals with increasingly dramatic speeches. Sound familiar? It's like scrolling through social media today, where everyone's competing to have the hottest take, the wittiest comeback, or the most outrageous opinion. The Stoics looked at this circus and said, "No thanks. Real wisdom doesn't need a megaphone." Epictetus, who started life as a slave before becoming one of history's most influential teachers, understood this deeply. He taught that wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few needs. But he could have just as easily been talking about social energy. True social wealth doesn't come from having the biggest network or being the center of attention at every party. It comes from having deep, meaningful connections with people who actually matter. This is where introverts have been getting it wrong about themselves. We've been buying into society's narrative that we're somehow deficient, that we need to become more like extroverts to succeed. But the Stoics teach us something revolutionary. Our natural tendencies aren't weaknesses to overcome, they're strengths to cultivate. When you prefer one meaningful conversation over small talk with 20 people, you're not being antisocial. You're being selective about where you invest your energy, which is exactly what Seneca recommended when he wrote about the importance of choosing your associations carefully. When you need time alone to recharge after social interactions, you're not being weird or difficult. You're practicing what Marcus Aurelius called the retreat into yourself, recognizing that your inner world is where your real power lies. When you listen more than you speak in meetings, you're not lacking confidence. You're demonstrating what Epictetus taught about the wisdom of speaking only when you have something valuable to add to the conversation. The world misunderstands quiet people because it has forgotten that strength doesn't always announce itself. In our Instagram culture, where everything valuable is supposed to be visible and shareable, we've lost sight of the fact that the most important work happens behind the scenes. The programmer who quietly fixes the bug that could have crashed the entire system. The teacher who stays after school to help the struggling student. The friend who remembers your birthday without posting about it on social media. Here's what the world is missing when it overlooks introverts. We're the ones who notice what others miss because we're not too busy talking to pay attention. We're the ones who think before we speak, which means when we do contribute to a conversation, it's usually worth hearing. We're the ones who can sit comfortably with difficult emotions and complex problems. while others are rushing to quick fixes and surface-level solutions. The ancient Stoics understood that in a world full of noise, the person who has mastered inner peace holds the real advantage. They knew that while everyone else is exhausting themselves trying to control external circumstances, the wise person focuses on what they can actually control: their thoughts, their responses, and their character. This is why Stoicism feels so natural to introverts. It's not about becoming louder or more aggressive. It's about becoming more intentional, more thoughtful, and more aligned with your authentic self. It's about recognizing that your quiet strength isn't a consolation prize. It's the main event. The world needs people who can think deeply in an age of shallow thinking. It needs people who can listen carefully in a time when everyone's waiting for their turn to talk. It needs people who can find peace within themselves when everything around them is chaos. That's not a personality flaw, that's a superpower. 2. The secret advantage introverts have over everyone else. Meet David, a marketing manager in Austin who discovered something that changed his entire career. While his extroverted colleagues were networking at happy hours and dominating brainstorming sessions, David was doing something different. Every morning before work, he'd spend 20 minutes writing in a journal, reflecting on the previous day's challenges and planning his approach for the day ahead. His coworkers thought he was just being antisocial when he declined their invitations to grab drinks after work. What they didn't realize was that David was accidentally practicing a 2,000-year-old technique that would give him an unfair advantage in everything he did. That technique? It's called philosophical reflection, and it's the cornerstone of Stoic practice. While everyone else was burning through their mental energy on small talk and social obligations, David was systematically building the exact skills that the most successful leaders throughout history have relied on: self-awareness, emotional regulation, and strategic thinking. Here's the secret that most people don't understand about introverts: we're not avoiding social interaction because we can't handle it. We're being selective about how we spend our mental energy because we intuitively understand something that extroverts often miss. Every human being has a limited amount of cognitive resources each day, and how you choose to spend that energy determines the quality of your thinking, your decisions, and ultimately your life. Marcus Aurelius figured this out while running the Roman Empire. Every night, he would retreat to his private chambers and write what we now know as his meditations. These weren't meant to be published, they were his personal practice of what Stoics call evening reflection. He would review his day, examine his thoughts and reactions, and prepare his mind for the challenges ahead. This wasn't just journaling for fun, this was mental training at the highest level. Think about what this means in practical terms. While other Roman leaders were staying up late at banquets, making impulsive decisions influenced by wine and social pressure, Marcus Aurelius was developing the mental clarity that would make him one of history's most respected rulers. He understood that true power comes not from dominating every social situation, but from mastering your inner world. This is exactly what modern introverts do naturally, often without realizing the strategic advantage they're creating. When you choose to spend Friday night reading a book instead of going to a crowded party, you're not missing out on life. You're investing in the kind of deep learning and reflection that builds wisdom over time. When you prefer to process information internally before sharing your thoughts, you're not being slow or indecisive. You're practicing what Seneca called the discipline of assent, making sure your responses are thoughtful rather than reactive. The Stoics developed specific exercises that align perfectly with introvert strengths. Take negative visualization, for example. This practice involves imagining potential challenges or losses before they happen, not to create anxiety, but to build mental resilience and appreciate what you currently have. This requires the kind of introspective thinking that introverts excel at, while extroverts often find it uncomfortable because it requires sitting alone with potentially difficult thoughts. Epictetus taught another powerful technique called the discipline of desire, which involves carefully examining what you truly want versus what society tells you to want. This kind of deep self-examination happens best in solitude, when you're not influenced by other people's opinions or social pressure. Introverts have a natural advantage here because we're comfortable spending time in our own heads, sorting through our authentic desires versus external expectations. Here's where it gets really interesting. Modern neuroscience is backing up what the Stoics understood intuitively. Research shows that introverts have higher baseline arousal in their nervous systems, which means we're naturally more sensitive to stimulation and more likely to notice subtle details that others miss. This isn't a weakness, it's a superpower that allows us to pick up on social cues, environmental changes, and logical inconsistencies that fly right past more extroverted people. Dr. Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people reveals that about 70% of highly sensitive individuals are introverts, and these people consistently outperform others on tasks requiring careful observation, strategic thinking, and creative problem solving. We're literally wired to notice what others miss and to process information more thoroughly before acting. This explains why so many introverts excel in fields that require deep thinking: research, writing, programming, design, strategy, and analysis. We're not just good at these things by accident. Our brains are optimized for the kind of sustained, focused attention that produces breakthrough insights and innovative solutions. The Stoics called this the view from above, the ability to step back from immediate circumstances and see the bigger picture. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You can commit injustice by doing nothing." He understood that sometimes the most powerful action is thoughtful non-action, waiting for the right moment to intervene rather than reacting impulsively to every situation. Think about how this plays out in modern workplaces. While extroverted colleagues might jump into every discussion and volunteer for every high-visibility project, introverts are more likely to choose their battles strategically. We're the ones who notice when a project is heading in the wrong direction before it becomes a crisis. We're the ones who ask the uncomfortable questions that prevent costly mistakes. We're the ones who can work independently without constant supervision and validation. This strategic approach to life isn't laziness or social anxiety, it's wisdom in action. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Introverts understand this intuitively. We know that saying yes to everything means saying no to the things that really matter. We know that being everywhere means being fully present nowhere. The secret advantage that introverts have is this: while the world is getting louder and more chaotic, we're getting better at finding signal in the noise. While others are exhausting themselves trying to keep up with every trend and respond to every notification, we're developing the mental discipline to focus on what actually matters. This isn't about being antisocial or avoiding challenges. It's about being intentional with your energy and strategic with your attention. The Stoics understood that the person who can maintain inner calm while others are losing their minds has a massive advantage in any situation, whether it's a business negotiation, a family crisis, or a global pandemic. Your introversion isn't a limitation to overcome, it's a competitive advantage to leverage. The world needs people who can think before they speak, who can sit with complexity without rushing to oversimplified solutions, and who can maintain perspective when everyone else is caught up in the drama of the moment. 3. When alone time becomes a prison, and how ancient wisdom breaks you free. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a graphic designer in Portland who thought she had introversion figured out. After years of forcing herself to attend networking events and office parties that left her feeling drained, she finally gave herself permission to embrace her need for solitude. She started working from home, ordered groceries online, and found ways to minimize social interaction. For a while, it felt like paradise. No more small talk, no more forced smiles, no more pretending to enjoy conversations about reality TV shows. But somewhere along the way, Jennifer's healthy boundaries became walls. What started as protecting her energy turned into avoiding any situation that might be uncomfortable. She stopped accepting invitations altogether, even from close friends. She convinced herself that she was just being true to her introvert nature, but deep down, she knew something had shifted. Her alone time, which used to recharge and inspire her, started feeling empty and isolating. This is the trap that many introverts fall into, and it's one that I know intimately. There's a seductive quality to complete solitude that can trick us into thinking that if some alone time is good, then maximum alone time must be better. We start to see the outside world as nothing but noise and chaos, something to be avoided rather than engaged with selectively and intentionally. I've been there myself. There have been weeks when I talked to maybe one person and I told myself I was perfectly fine with that arrangement. I'd walk alone through Central Park, eat dinner alone while reading, and spend entire weekends in my apartment without feeling like I was missing anything important. But here's what I didn't realize at the time: I wasn't practicing healthy introversion, I was practicing avoidance. The ancient Stoics understood this danger better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius, despite being one of history's most introspective leaders, warned against the temptation to retreat completely from the world. He wrote something that completely changed how I think about solitude. People seek retreat for themselves in the countryside, by the seashore, in the mountains, and you too have made it your habit to long for such things. But this is altogether the mark of a most common sort of person, for it is always possible for you to retire into yourself. At first glance, this might seem like Marcus is dismissing the value of physical retreat, but he's actually making a much more sophisticated point. He's saying the true peace doesn't come from changing your external circumstances, it comes from developing inner resilience that travels with you wherever you go. Think about what this means for introverts who use solitude as an escape rather than as a tool for growth. When we retreat to our apartments, our home offices, or our favorite quiet coffee shops, are we building strength, or are we hiding from challenges that could help us grow? Are we recharging our batteries so we can engage more effectively with the world, or are we avoiding the world altogether? Marcus Aurelius had every reason to want to escape. He was dealing with plagues, wars, political betrayals, and the constant pressure of governing millions of people. He could have easily retreated to some villa in the countryside and left the messy business of leadership to someone else. Instead, he found what he called the inner citadel, a place of peace and strength that existed within him regardless of external circumstances. This inner citadel isn't just philosophical poetry, it's a practical skill that introverts can develop. It's the ability to find calm in the middle of chaos, to maintain your center even when you're surrounded by energy-draining people, and to engage with the world from a place of strength rather than defensiveness. Here's how this works in practice. Instead of avoiding the office holiday party altogether, you might attend for exactly 1 hour, have 2 meaningful conversations, and then leave when you start to feel drained. Instead of never speaking up in meetings, you might choose one topic that you care about and contribute thoughtfully to that discussion. Instead of declining every social invitation, you might accept the ones that align with your values and politely pass on the rest. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, spent years in political exile, forced away from Rome and the life he had built. He could have spent that time bitter and resentful, waiting for circumstances to change. Instead, he used his isolation to develop some of the most profound insights in Stoic philosophy. He learned to find meaning and purpose even when his external circumstances were far from ideal. This is the difference between productive solitude and escapist isolation. Productive solitude is intentional, it has a purpose, and it prepares you to engage more effectively with the world. You might spend Sunday morning journaling about the week ahead, reading something that challenges your thinking, or working on a creative project that energizes you. This kind of alone time makes you stronger, wiser, and more capable of handling whatever life throws at you. Escapist isolation, on the other hand, is reactive. It's about avoiding discomfort rather than building resilience. It's scrolling through social media for hours to avoid thinking about problems you need to solve. It's binge-watching Netflix to numb anxiety rather than addressing its root causes. It's convincing yourself that you don't need other people when what you really mean is that relationships feel too risky or demanding. The Stoics teach us that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in the presence of fear. For introverts, this often means engaging with the world even when it feels overwhelming, not because we have to become extroverts, but because growth happens at the edge of our comfort zones. Epictetus, who understood suffering intimately from his years as a slave, taught that we become stronger not by avoiding difficulties, but by changing our relationship to them. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This applies perfectly to social situations that introverts find draining. The goal isn't to avoid them entirely, but to develop the inner resources to handle them with grace and authenticity. This doesn't mean forcing yourself into situations that are genuinely harmful or accepting treatment that disrespects your boundaries. It means distinguishing between healthy self-protection and self-limiting avoidance. It means asking yourself, am I staying home tonight because I genuinely need to recharge, or am I staying home because I'm afraid of feeling awkward or misunderstood? The path forward isn't about becoming more extroverted. It's about becoming more intentional. It's about using your alone time to build the inner strength that allows you to engage with the world on your own terms. It's about developing what the Stoics called preferred indifference, the ability to engage fully with life while remaining unattached to specific outcomes. When you master this balance, something remarkable happens. Your solitude becomes a source of power rather than a hiding place. Your social interactions become more meaningful because you're choosing them consciously rather than enduring them reluctantly. And most importantly, you stop seeing the world as something that threatens your peace and start seeing it as something that can enrich your understanding of yourself and others. 4. How to stay powerful when everyone won't stop talking. Imagine this, you're sitting in a conference room in downtown Los Angeles, surrounded by 12 colleagues who seem to be competing in some kind of verbal marathon. There's Kevin from sales, who's been talking for 7 straight minutes about his weekend golf game. There's Lisa from marketing, who interrupts Kevin to share her own golf story, which somehow leads to a detailed analysis of her daughter's soccer schedule. Meanwhile, Tom from accounting is simultaneously checking his phone and adding random comments that have nothing to do with anything anyone else is saying. You came to this meeting prepared. You've read the agenda, you've thought through the issues, and you actually have valuable insights to share. But every time you take a breath to speak, someone else jumps in with another tangent about their commute, their lunch plans, or their opinion about the weather. Sound familiar? This is the daily reality for millions of introverts who find themselves drowning in a sea of meaningless chatter. We live in a culture that has confused talking with communicating, noise with substance, and volume with value. The result is that thoughtful people often feel like they're being held hostage by conversations that go nowhere and accomplish nothing. But here's what most introverts don't realize. Your discomfort with meaningless chatter isn't a social weakness, it's actually a sign of wisdom. The ancient Stoics dealt with exactly the same problem in their time, and they developed strategies that can help you not just survive these situations, but actually use them to your advantage. Epictetus, one of the most practical Stoic teachers, lived in a world where public speaking and social performance were everything. Roman society was built around the forum where politicians and citizens would gather to debate, argue, and show off their rhetorical skills. It was like Twitter, but in person and even louder. In this environment, Epictetus taught something revolutionary: that true power comes not from dominating conversations, but from mastering the art of strategic silence. He wrote, "Be silent for the most part, or speak merely what is necessary and in few words. You may, however, enjoy discourse sometimes when occasion calls for it, but not on any of the common subjects like gladiators, or horse races, or athletes, or feasting, or other vulgar topics of conversation, but principally that of men, so as not to blame or praise or compare persons." Let me translate this into modern terms. Epictetus is saying, don't feel obligated to fill every silence with words. When you do speak, make it count. And for the love of all that's holy, don't waste your mental energy on gossip, celebrity drama, or whatever the ancient Roman equivalent of reality TV was. This isn't about being antisocial or superior. It's about recognizing that your attention is valuable and you get to choose how to spend it. When Kevin is rambling about his golf game, you don't have to pretend to be fascinated. You can listen politely while mentally preparing your actual contribution to the meeting. When Lisa interrupts with her own story, you don't have to compete for airtime. You can wait for a natural pause and then redirect the conversation back to something meaningful. Here's the secret that most people miss. In a room full of people who are talking just to hear themselves talk, the person who speaks with intention and purpose automatically commands more respect and attention. Think about it. When everyone is shouting, the person who whispers gets heard. When everyone is rushing to fill every silence, the person who chooses their words carefully stands out. Marcus Aurelius understood this principle deeply. As the Roman emperor, he was surrounded by advisors, senators, and courtiers who all wanted his attention and approval. Many of them would talk endlessly, hoping to impress him with their eloquence or their knowledge of current events. But Marcus learned to listen for substance beneath the surface noise. He developed what we might call selective attention, the ability to tune out the meaningless chatter while remaining alert for actually important information. This skill is incredibly valuable in modern workplaces. While your colleagues are exhausting themselves trying to be heard over each other, you can position yourself as the person who speaks when they have something worth saying. This doesn't mean never participating in casual conversation, but it does mean being strategic about when and how you engage. For example, instead of jumping into Kevin's golf story with your own sports anecdote, you might wait for a pause and then say something like, "Speaking of performance under pressure, I've been thinking about how we can apply that same focus to our Q4 targets." You've acknowledged the conversation without getting lost in it, and you've redirected everyone's attention to something that actually matters. Seneca, the third great Stoic philosopher, was a master of this technique. As an advisor to Emperor Nero, he was constantly surrounded by people who loved to hear themselves talk. But Seneca learned to use these situations as opportunities for observation and learning. While others were performing, he was studying human nature, gathering insights that would later inform his philosophical writings. You can do the same thing. When you're trapped in a meeting that's gone off the rails, instead of getting frustrated or checked out, you can use it as a laboratory for understanding human behavior. Notice who interrupts whom. Pay attention to who actually listens versus who's just waiting for their turn to talk. Observe how different people react when they're not getting the attention they want. This kind of strategic observation serves two purposes. First, it keeps your mind engaged even when the conversation isn't stimulating. Second, it gives you valuable information about the people you work with, information that can help you communicate more effectively with them in the future. But here's the most important part: when you do choose to speak, make sure it's worth the wait. Epictetus taught that we should speak principally that of men, meaning we should focus our conversations on things that actually matter: character, purpose, growth, and meaningful action. In a modern context, this might mean steering conversations toward problem-solving, creative thinking, or genuine human connection. The power of strategic silence isn't about being passive or withdrawn. It's about being intentional. It's about recognizing that in a world full of noise, the person who can create moments of clarity and focus has an enormous advantage. When you master this skill, something remarkable happens. People start coming to you when they want to have real conversations about important topics, because they know you won't waste their time with empty chatter. Your introversion isn't a barrier to overcome in these situations, it's a competitive advantage to leverage. While everyone else is burning through their mental energy on meaningless social performance, you're conserving yours for the moments that actually count. 5. Why being picky about friends makes you stronger. Imagine this. You're at a dinner party in San Francisco, surrounded by people who are lively, engaging, and full of stories. Everything seems great until you notice that one person in the corner, the one who always seems to have something negative to say. As the evening unfolds, they begin to dominate the conversation with complaints about work, relationships, and life in general. You feel your energy draining just listening to their constant negativity. Suddenly, the laughter and warmth in the room feel suffocated by their relentless pessimism. As an introvert, you likely know the power of the company you keep. You understand that certain friendships can uplift you, inspire you, and help you grow, while others can leave you feeling depleted and anxious. The challenge lies in recognizing that choosing the right friends is not just a matter of preference. It's a strategic decision that can significantly impact your mental and emotional well-being. The Stoics, with their profound understanding of human nature, emphasize the importance of choosing your companions wisely. Seneca, a prominent Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively about friendship, noting that the people we surround ourselves with play a crucial role in shaping our character and influencing our thoughts. He famously said, "One of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood." In a world that often encourages superficial connections, true friendship becomes a powerful antidote against the negativity and chaos we might encounter. But what does it mean to be picky about friends? It doesn't mean that you should only seek out those who are always positive or who never have a bad day. Instead, it means being selective about the relationships that genuinely add value to your life. Introverts often thrive in environments where they can engage in meaningful conversations, share ideas, and experience emotional support. Therefore, it's essential to seek out individuals who resonate with these values. One of the key aspects of Stoicism is the understanding that we have control over our perceptions and responses. This extends to our relationships. While we may not have control over how others act, we have complete control over whom we choose to spend our time with. This realization can be incredibly empowering. It reminds us that we don't have to engage with toxic individuals or allow negative energy to penetrate our lives. Instead, we can choose to cultivate relationships that uplift us and foster our growth. Take the story of Alex, a young entrepreneur in New York City. When he first started his business, he surrounded himself with a group of friends who were overly critical and cynical about his ambitions. They spent hours sharing horror stories about failed startups and discussing the challenges of the industry in a negative light. Over time, Alex found himself questioning his own abilities and feeling less motivated to pursue his dreams. One day, he stumbled upon a local entrepreneur group that emphasized positivity, collaboration, and support. The members shared their successes, offered constructive feedback, and celebrated each other's milestones. As Alex began to spend time with this new group, he noticed a significant shift in his mindset. He felt more empowered, inspired, and motivated to take risks. The energy of this new circle was contagious, and it reignited his passion for his business. Alex's experience illustrates a fundamental truth about friendships. They have the power to shape our beliefs and attitudes. When we surround ourselves with individuals who uplift us, share our values, and encourage our growth, we are more likely to thrive. On the other hand, friendships that are steeped in negativity can lead to self-doubt and stagnation. This principle is echoed in the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, who emphasized the importance of maintaining a clear mind and surrounding oneself with virtuous individuals. He believed that our companions should contribute to our moral development and inspire us to be better versions of ourselves. In his meditations, he often reflected on the qualities he admired in others and how he could embody those traits himself. However, being picky about friends doesn't mean you should isolate yourself or avoid social interactions altogether. Introverts can still engage with a diverse range of people while being selective about deeper friendships. It's about cultivating a supportive inner circle while remaining open to new connections. This balance allows for a richer social experience without compromising your well-being. Being discerning in friendships also means recognizing when a relationship is no longer serving you. It's essential to be aware of the dynamics at play. If you find yourself consistently feeling drained after spending time with certain individuals, it may be worth reevaluating those relationships. This doesn't mean you have to confront them or cut ties abruptly. Instead, you can gradually create more distance and focus on nurturing the connections that bring you joy and support. Furthermore, nurturing strong friendships requires effort and intention. As an introvert, you may prefer one-on-one interactions over large gatherings. But this doesn't mean you should shy away from reaching out. Regular check-ins, sharing experiences, and being present for your friends can deepen those connections. Stoicism teaches us that true friendship is a mutual exchange of support and understanding, and it flourishes when both parties invest time and effort. In addition, being picky about friends doesn't mean you should seek out perfection. Everyone has their struggles, and it's essential to approach friendships with empathy and understanding. However, it's crucial to differentiate between friends who are going through tough times and those who consistently bring negativity into your life. The former can benefit from your support, while the latter may drain your energy without offering any real value in return. Ultimately, the goal is to create a supportive network that aligns with your values and aspirations. Surrounding yourself with positive influences can help you navigate challenges, celebrate achievements, and foster personal growth. As you embrace your introverted nature, remember that your choice of companions is one of the most powerful tools at your disposal. As you reflect on your friendships, ask yourself, do these individuals uplift me? Do they challenge me to grow? Do they encourage me to pursue my passions? If the answer is no, it might be time to reevaluate those relationships. By being intentional about the company you keep, you're not only nurturing your own well-being, but you're also creating space for deeper connections that foster mutual growth and understanding. The Stoics understood that our relationships shape our character, and by choosing wisely, We harness the power to cultivate a life filled with meaningful connections, emotional support, and personal empowerment. You have the ability to choose your circle and, in doing so, shape the narrative of your life. Let that be a source of strength as you navigate the complexities of relationships in a noisy world. 6. Stop overthinking what others think, the Stoic way to mental freedom. Meet Rachel, a talented graphic designer in Boston who spent 3 sleepless nights replaying a single comment from her boss. During a team meeting, her supervisor had said, "I'm not sure this design direction is quite right," about a project Rachel had poured her heart into. While her extroverted colleague Mike shrugged off similar feedback and moved on to the next task, Rachel found herself spiraling into an endless loop of analysis. What did he really mean? Was her work terrible? Did everyone in the room think she was incompetent? Should she look for another job? This scenario plays out millions of times every day in the minds of introverts who possess what can be both a gift and a curse, the ability to think deeply about everything, including what other people think about us. While this reflective nature can lead to profound insights and careful decision-making, it can also trap us in mental prisons of our own making, where we become prisoners to other people's opinions, real or imagined. The ancient Stoics understood this struggle intimately. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, frequently battled with concerns about how others perceived him. In his private journal, he wrote extensively about the mental freedom that comes from releasing attachment to others' opinions. But here's what makes his insights so powerful: he wasn't writing from a place of arrogance or indifference. He was writing from a place of hard-won wisdom earned through years of learning to distinguish between productive reflection and destructive rumination. The difference between these two mental states is crucial for introverts to understand. Productive reflection involves analyzing a situation to extract useful lessons, improve future performance, or understand different perspectives. It has a clear purpose and leads to actionable insights. Destructive rumination, on the other hand, is the endless replaying of events, conversations, or interactions without any constructive outcome. It's mental quicksand that pulls you deeper the more you struggle against it. Marcus Aurelius discovered a powerful antidote to this mental trap. He wrote, "When people insult you or hate you, or people voice simple criticisms, go to their souls, penetrate inside, and see what sort of people they are. You will realize there's no need to be concerned with anxiety that they should hold any particular opinion about you." This isn't about dismissing feedback or becoming callous to others' feelings. It's about developing the psychological distance necessary to evaluate criticism objectively rather than personally. Think about what this means in practical terms. When Rachel's boss criticized her design, instead of immediately assuming it reflected poorly on her worth as a person or professional, she could have asked herself, "What's driving this feedback? Is my boss having a stressful day? Does he have a different vision for the project that he hasn't clearly communicated? Is there something specific about the design that isn't working, or is this more about his personal preferences?" This shift in perspective transforms criticism from a personal attack into valuable information. It allows you to separate your identity from your work, your worth from others' opinions, and your peace of mind from external validation. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to feedback or refusing to improve. It means approaching criticism with curiosity rather than defensiveness, with objectivity rather than emotion. Epictetus, who experienced both slavery and freedom, understood better than most how external circumstances and others' opinions can control our mental state if we let them. He taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. When someone criticizes your work, the criticism itself is just information. The suffering comes from the story you tell yourself about what that criticism means about you as a person. This insight is particularly powerful for introverts because we tend to be highly sensitive to social feedback. Our brains are wired to notice subtle cues and process social information deeply, which can be an advantage in understanding complex interpersonal dynamics. But this same sensitivity can become overwhelming when we apply it to every casual comment, sideways glance, or perceived slight. Consider the story of James, a software engineer in Seattle who spent years avoiding speaking up in meetings because he was terrified of saying something that might make him look foolish. He would prepare extensively, craft perfect responses in his head, and then remain silent because he couldn't guarantee that his contribution would be received positively. The irony was that his fear of being judged negatively led to him being perceived as disengaged and uncommitted, exactly the opposite of what he was trying to achieve. Everything changed when James learned to apply Stoic principles to his overthinking. Instead of trying to control how others perceived him, he focused on what he could actually control: the quality of his preparation, the thoughtfulness of his contributions, and his commitment to adding value to discussions. He realized that he had been giving other people enormous power over his mental state and professional growth, power that belonged to him alone. The Stoics teach us that other people's opinions are what they call externals, things that exist outside our direct control. We can influence how others perceive us through our actions and words, but we cannot control their thoughts, judgments, or reactions. When we tie our peace of mind to these externals, we become slaves to forces beyond our influence. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to relationships or social feedback. Humans are social creatures, and caring about how we affect others is part of being emotionally intelligent and socially responsible. The key is learning to care without being controlled, to listen without being devastated, and to improve without being paralyzed by the fear of imperfection. Marcus Aurelius offered another profound insight: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. For introverts who struggle with overthinking, this realization can be life-changing. You cannot control whether your boss likes your design, whether your colleague approves of your presentation style, or whether strangers at a party find you interesting. But you have complete control over how you interpret these situations and what you choose to do with that information. The path to mental freedom isn't about becoming thick-skinned or indifferent to others. It's about developing what the Stoics called the discipline of judgment, the ability to evaluate situations clearly without being overwhelmed by emotion or assumption. It's about recognizing that your worth isn't determined by others' opinions, your success isn't measured by universal approval, and your peace of mind doesn't depend on external validation. When you master this discipline, something remarkable happens. You stop wasting mental energy on things you cannot control and start investing it in things you can. You become more confident in your decisions because they're based on your values rather than others' expectations. You become more resilient in the face of criticism because you understand that it reflects the critic's perspective, not your inherent worth. Most importantly, you reclaim your mental freedom and use your natural reflective abilities as the strength they were meant to be, rather than the prison they can become. Your quiet power is needed now more than ever. We live in unprecedented times. Our world is louder, faster, and more chaotic than ever before. Social media demands constant performance. The news cycle never stops. Everyone seems to be shouting over each other, competing for attention in an endless digital arena. In this environment, you might think that being an introvert is a disadvantage, that your preference for depth over breadth, quality over quantity, and reflection over reaction makes you somehow less equipped to thrive. But here's the truth that I want you to carry with you. The world desperately needs what you have to offer. While everyone else is burning out from constant stimulation and surface-level engagement, you possess something invaluable. the ability to think deeply, listen carefully, and respond thoughtfully. These aren't consolation prizes for not being extroverted enough. These are superpowers that our society is starving for. The Stoic philosophers we've explored today, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, weren't popular because they were the loudest voices in ancient Rome. They're remembered 2,000 years later because they understood something that our modern world has forgotten. That true strength comes from within, that wisdom often wears the mask of silence, and that the most profound insights emerge not from constant noise, but from quiet contemplation. Think about the challenges facing our world right now. We need people who can cut through the noise and identify what really matters. We need individuals who won't be swayed by every trending topic or social media outrage, but who can maintain perspective and focus on long-term solutions. We need leaders who listen more than they speak, who think before they react, and who choose their words carefully because they understand their power. That's you. Your introversion isn't a limitation to overcome. It's a gift to develop and share with a world that desperately needs your unique perspective. Your ability to be comfortable in solitude gives you access to insights that others miss while they're busy performing for an audience. Your preference for meaningful conversations over small talk means you can create the deep connections that actually change lives. Your tendency to think before speaking means that when you do contribute, it's usually worth hearing. The ancient Stoics understood that the person who has mastered inner peace holds real power in any situation. In our chaotic modern world, this truth is more relevant than ever. While others are exhausting themselves trying to keep up with every trend and respond to every notification, you have the opportunity to be the calm in the storm, the voice of reason in the chaos, the steady presence that others can rely on. Your quiet strength isn't just what you need to thrive, it's what the world needs to heal. So embrace your introversion. Develop your Stoic practices. Trust your instincts. And remember that in a world full of noise, the person who can create moments of clarity and wisdom has an enormous advantage. If this message resonated with you, I'd love for you to join our community here at Stoic Vivu. Hit that subscribe button to continue exploring how ancient wisdom can transform your modern life. Give this video a like if it helped you see your introversion in a new light, and share it with someone who needs to hear that their quiet nature is actually their greatest strength. The world needs your voice, even if it's spoken softly.